What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. It's been a handful of weeks since we last shot a video, but as you can see, the car is pretty much all finished up right behind us and ready to hit the track once again. We've actually already taken this car out to the track, shake it down, make sure that nothing was gonna fall apart on us on the track, make sure that all of our systems were good to go, and to make sure that everything we've replaced on this car was good to go and that we put everything back in the correct order so that nothing will fall apart on us. We were originally scheduled and ready to go for the first practice up at Colorado National Speedway on the 13th, but unfortunately, we actually ended up getting a nice little hole in our radiator, and unfortunately that caused us to take a little bit of time and get this all plugged up before we can head out there. And unfortunately we didn't have our radiator back in time to make it to that first practice, so we did unfortunately have to forego that first week, but luckily last week we were able to bring the car out and do what we needed to do. So we showed up to the track last week with nothing really different setup wise on the car compared to what we had last year. We did, however, show up to the track quite a bit late, so we only gave ourselves time to run 2 sessions last week. We actually almost didn't make the first session we ran because we had to get the car teched before we can get it on the track, and it took a little while to get the inspection sticker, but we did end up passing that safety inspection and we were good to head out onto the track with no real issues. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to throw the GoPro in there, and really our first session was slow anyway, just shaking down the car, making sure that none of the bolts were coming loose, making sure that everything was still good. After that session, we pulled off, looked over all of the bolts that may have come loose, and then once we determined we were good to go, we ended up going out for a full session. Unfortunately, we did have 2-year-old tires, so we couldn't really push super hard, but we did want to put some decent heat into everything and make sure that everything was going to be good for a race day. Actually able to put together quite a few laps, which felt pretty good. Obviously we had to get used to the new harness in the car since it is a little bit of a different style, but I am liking it so far. I do think the older tires were hurting us a little bit, but because they didn't have the timing loop running while we were at the track, we couldn't actually figure out what our lap times were, so I don't know how far off of the pace we were per se, but we were definitely tight during that whole session, especially in the middle off. But there were definitely a handful of things during that session that we found to be some things that we wanted to change. The first thing we began to notice was that during our entries into the corner, every time we pressed the brake pedal, we'd get a massive shake in our steering wheel. So with that, we believe we have some warped rotors up here in the fronts, and we actually ended up already taking our wheels off, taking out our brake pads, and just letting the rotors and hubs spin freely, and checking how it moves back and forth inside of a fixed position. And unfortunately, it does look like both of our rotors up here are warped. So we are gonna have to swap out our rotors with some better ones or get these ones machined down and see if we can get that remedied for the next time we go out, because it definitely doesn't feel good to have that vibration running all the way up through your steering wheel. It's definitely not a comfortable feeling. Another thing we may try to fix for this car is actually going to be how we roll the center. Right now, it felt like we were super tight in the center, and coming off the corner, we were still pretty tight unless we completely blew through our rear tires and spun them. Our entry was a bit loose, but I think it's just how we adjusted our rear brakes right now. So we'll probably back off our shoes just a little bit to try and help tighten up the car on entry so we're not spinning out, which we actually did do once, roughly about 3/4 of the way through the session. It was unfortunate, but I felt it coming and just knew it was going to happen. Luckily, everyone who was still on track were able to avoid us spinning out, but still not ideal to show up that loose on entry. So we'll try and fix that. And obviously, I do believe the tires we were running were probably making a big impact on how our car was handling in the middle of the corner. So obviously, we'll show up with some more fresh tires than we had on that day for practice. But if it still feels a bit tight in the middle and the exit like that, I think we'll drop our cross just a little bit while we're there. We'll probably try to take a full round out or something along those lines to make sure that we don't change our ride heights too much, but still have the ability to drop our cross, because obviously we're still learning in these cars and we don't know a ton, but we do know that if you adjust the opposite corners the same and then the other side of the car the same, it'll adjust cross without changing your ride heights. So that is an option for us while we're at the track. But overall, I think our practice day went pretty well. So as of right now, our first race in this car for this year is slotted for May 4th up at Colorado National Speedway. And we have every intention of making it to that race with the same thing it has right now. Obviously, we're gonna swap out these front rotors to hopefully get rid of that vibration on entry every time we brake. But for the most part, there's not really a whole lot of changes I wanna make to the car. Of course, since we've already taken the car out on the track, we are gonna go through everything and do a full nut and bolt check once again. Bleed all 4 corners of the brakes, make sure everything's good to go, and hopefully we show up on May 4th with a good enough car to make it into the show. Right now our main goal is to try and make the fast feature up at CNS at least once for the year. We were right on the cusp of it last year, but a lot of people are starting to get newer cars and upgrade all their stuff, so we're gonna have to try and keep up with them, start leaning on the people who are faster, but we'll see how much they're willing to share with us information-wise. But that's all I've really got for this video. Obviously, it's been a while since our last one, but I definitely appreciate you guys watching, and I hope to catch you in the next one.
You get